I'm Robert Cavuoto, and today on Sonic Perspectives, I'm pleased to be speaking with Cody of Crownlands for the release of their new album, Apocalypse, out May 15th. Cody, welcome, and thank you so much for taking the time.
Thank you so much for having me. It's such a pleasure.
What a tremendous album, man. It is a really wild ride of the shades of dark and light. It's incredible. Congratulations.
I love the way that you put that. Thank you.
Yeah, it's so true, though. With writing Apocalypse, there lies a tremendous amount of energy, talent, musicianship. For
Mm.
two people. It's incredible. Tell me about the power of two in delivering your albums, particularly this one.
Totally. Well, the power of two is a beautiful boon because we can riff off each other and there's no one else to sort of tell us no or tell us, give us any sort of other input. And we insulate ourselves to be these just two writers riffing off of each other. And when we write together, everything we make is made live in the room. And
Mm,
so it's just our pure chemistry together, where we piece things together. We figure out what works, what doesn't work. Um, and there's this really beautiful alchemy that happens when we find something that works so well for us when we record everything, right? So we find, like, for example, we find a 15-second passage with an amazing riff that becomes one of the parts in Apocalypse, and then we stack that against something else, and we have like a working open demo session where we're live recording everything and we test everything, we A, B, C everything, and we decide what part goes next until we get to the end of the song. And we did that for like the whole record, and
mm.
it's been an amazing thing to be able to do. I guess we don't really recognize that it's wild to do as two people because we've
Oh,
always done it as two
right.
people. But there is definitely a magic to it. And there's also there is a downside where there is no true democracy. So if one of us doesn't want to do something, if no one concedes, nothing happens. So it's an interesting limitation, I think, in the power of two that actually becomes a strength if you can surmount it and create around that issue. And I
Right.
feel like that led us to really cool creative things that wouldn't have happened otherwise. For example, if I hear something that Kevin does and I say, "Oh, well, I think we really need a chorus." And then he says, "No, I don't think we do." And I say, "No, no, I think we do. I challenge you to make a chorus."
Yeah,
And then he makes one, it becomes Blackstar, right? Like,
right,
for
right.
example, that riff, it lived in our ecosystem for years. And then
You pushed him.
I always, I always shied away from doing it. And then he came to me with a demo saying, "Hey, what do you think of this riff again?" And I said, "Yeah, it's cool, but there's no chorus. I challenge you to make a chorus." And then he made the chorus and it sounded great. And I was
Right.
like, "Oh, look at
I
that.
got to put it on the album now. There's no
Yeah, we
there's no
gotta we
ifs, ands,
gotta
or
do
buts.
this."
You can't do
Yeah,
that
so
to a
now
guy, right? Yeah, it still
yeah, so
sucks.
yeah. So there's no excuse. Same thing with context. Fearless Part One. We had this cool riff, and then I was like, "This is really cool, but there's no chorus.
Yeah.
We got to make a chorus." And then he made this amazing, humongous sounding riff for the chorus, and it worked perfectly.
You're
So I
like
think that,
Steven Tyler. Don't bore us, get to the chorus. That's
yeah, don't force, get to the chorus. Yeah,
that's all
so I
about the.
feel like,
Did two guys, did you start off like a five piece, kicked out the other guitar player, kicked out the bass player, kicked off the drummer, said, I could play drums better than you and I could sing better than you and I could do it simultaneously. Is that the nucleus just condense on each other?
no, so the nucleus was exactly as it was.
Okay.
We started, uh, We started with me playing drums. Actually, we started the idea of the band where I was actually just gonna sing, and I was like, I think I was 19. I never
Yeah.
sang before.
Oh, wow.
Decided to just jam with Kevin, and I started singing, and this voice came out, and I was like, oh shoot, this is amazing. I gotta keep doing this. Maybe I just sing on this project. And I was a drummer my whole life. I've been
Yeah.
drumming since I was a year old, right? And Kevin and I drummed in a project before with another guy that didn't really work out. A year went by, we got together, we started jamming. So originally I was gonna sing, and then Kevin was gonna play guitar, and he had a kick drum in this place, and he started kicking it with his foot. to keep the beat. And we were doing like blues rock, right? And it
Yeah.
was so different. And then I was like, oh, dude, you're kind of missing beats here and there. Maybe I'll do it. And then I started kicking the kick drum. And then he's like, okay, well, what am I gonna do with my foot? And then he started playing the bass pedals with his
Yeah,
feet,
bass
kind of
pedals.
like Geddy Lee. Yeah, and so he started doing that, develop more of like a harmonic sort of counterpoint
Yeah,
sonic space in our music. And then I was like, you know what? I'm gonna sing and play drums. Screw it. Oh, I'll just do the backbeat on the snare and the kick. And I
yeah.
was like, no, I might as well just do this the whole thing. And so I learned how to sing, Robert. I learned how to sing while playing drums. So it's kind of just like a product of the environment, and that was the band
You got a
from
great
the
voice.
onset.
You got a
Thank you
great
so much.
voice.
Thank you very
And
much.
the elephant in the room is sometimes you sound like Geddy Lee, sometimes you sound like Robert Plant. True.
Thanks.
If there's any two people that you could want to sound like, it would be like them. And that just came out. Could you change? I guess you could change it up a little bit and say, gonna go with the more deeper bluesy Robert Plant. I'm gonna go with the higher falsetto Geddy Lee.
Yeah, well, it was a very hardened skill, you know.
Yes.
I grew up listening to all those guys, and what really inspired me to sing was MJ in the shower when I was a kid, and I would just sing in the shower for fun, whatever. And I had a good ear. I always had a good ear. That was like a thing, but I never played guitar or something like that.
Right.
So I would always be able to pick up a riff, and I would be able to play it on a piano as soon as I heard it. And that was kind of like my party trick. But I never really did anything with it until I started doing stuff with Crownlands, and then we started doing stuff, and it was more of a blues rock thing. So obviously, I was inspired more by,
Yeah.
Steve Marriott, John Fogerty, obviously Robert Plant,
Yeah.
Jeff Buckley, kind of stuff like that. And I really admired those guys for what they were able to do with the voice in that sort of music. And
Wow.
then when we started doing more progressive stuff, obviously, I grew up listening to Rush. They're my favorite band. I listened to them almost exclusively as a kid, up
Wow.
until the point of grade 8. My dad was a drummer, and his favorite band was Rush. It's like a family
It's in
household
the
name.
DNA.
It's in the DNA. And so he taught me drums when I was a year old, and I listened to him play Rush my whole life. So
Yeah.
that's also in my DNA. And then listening to Geddy and being like, damn, his voice is so cool, and like it gave me
Yes.
goosebumps, especially that 70s era Getty. And
Totally.
so that informed a lot of my melodic landscape, I guess, when it came to doing more angular progressive stuff. So I leaned toward it almost instinctively. Obviously I can pull from here and there as I please, almost sort of like like some sort of like just patchwork. I can just pull from sort of influences, but it's all just me. But
Incredible.
it
Incredible.
is, thank you so much.
Incredible.
I really appreciate that because it is
Crazy talent.
it's a massive comparison, and that's not
Yeah.
lost on me.
Well,
And I
considering a
love
guy who
it.
can't sing a note, my wife tells me to shut up. So when I'm I'm like, I got this. I got this. It's like, no, you don't got this. Let's stop. Give me a headache. No, I can appreciate it. Um, Considering the ambitious arrangements on all of these songs, do you ever
Yeah.
get there and go to the stage and go, how are we gonna do this now? We painted ourselves into a corner.
Yeah. Well, we used to do this thing where it was mostly my rule where I was like, Kevin, we can't go crazy with overdubs. How are we gonna do it live? And if we can't do it live, don't record it. And that was a thing we lived and died by up until our Fearless record, where Kevin insisted on adding the bass guitar as well as everything else with the arrangement. And I was like, well, you just painted yourself into a corner, my friend. How are you going to do it? And he got a double neck made for that song
Oh shit.
just so he was able to pick the hero moments for each passage and switch the next. And he's like, touche, here you go. This is how I'm going to do it. And so we took it from there and we decided, you know what? Screw it. We're going to be dead and gone before this music fades. This music is going to outlive us.
True.
This is an artistic piece. We're going to make music for the sake of the art. And how we figure it out live, we'll get there. We'll figure it out. We'll do
Right.
an arrangement, etc. And so on Apocalypse, we kind of eschewed our whole ethos of if you can't do it live, don't record it. And we did all sorts of crazy harmonies. As you know, Kevin can't really sing. So those harmonies are hard to do live. We have to do all sorts of different um, arrangements just so he can hit those notes in his register, and then we try to figure out what's the hero in this passage or this passage. Is it the synthesizer, guitar, bass? Is it both? Can he do it while tapping and
Yeah,
doing like crazy stuff like this? And the answer is yes to some degree, but there are limitations. And
of
so
course.
we're still working out a duo arrangement for Apocalypse, but we're able to get through it, which is really exciting. But what we've done on Apocalypse, we just finished a tour here in Ontario where we finished. We started bringing on two other musicians to
Yeah,
help
makes sense.
bolster the sound for the Apocalypse material specifically.
Okay, that makes sense. Being both big word, multi-instrumentalist.
Yeah.
What instrument do you lean towards when you're writing songs?
Well,
I
you
mean, you're
know,
a vocalist, you're a drummer. Where do you go with it?
yeah, well, what's interesting is I guess
What
it
do you got?
depends on the song, but being a drummer my whole life, my instinct is to jam something with Kevin. Then once we get the foundation, then I
Okay,
throw my bit on top of it. But that being said, there are songs where the inverse is true. Like Citadel, I came up with that melody when we were in Bahrain in the Middle East, and we were in a hotel, and I was just singing it in the shower. And I was like, oh, this is a really cool idea. I pitched it to Kevin, and then the song was made around it. But it's very seldom that that's the case. It's usually the music that
yeah,
informs the vocal over top, at least
okay.
in this project here. Yeah.
How about lyrics? When do you introduce lyrics? Are you the type of person that comes up with a lyrical line and says, you know what, let's build a song around the lyrics?
No. So I'm the kind of person who I hear the melody, I go for the melody and it's
Yeah.
gibberish. And sometimes that gibberish sounds kind of like something. And I'm like, what does that sound like? And I write the words that I think I'm hearing in it. And then we figure out what the song's about. We
Yeah.
understand what the song's about. And then we match it to the melody. But the
Okay.
melody first and then the lyrics come afterward.
Pretty cool. That's
Yeah.
my logic. When I was a kid and writing
Yeah.
songs with my friends, that's what we did. The riff came first, the melody on top of it, and then scanting some words and then figuring it
Yes,
out. Yeah.
exactly.
The first single, 19 minutes,
Yeah.
Apocalypse. What it's an earful. How do you want fans to absorb that as the first single?
Yeah, I feel like the intention to have it as our first single was very deliberate, so people could sit with it and digest it
Yeah,
and understand the story. Because in the track listing, it is the last song on our record, and it's such a long song. People statistically wouldn't get to it, if anything, if we just threw out the whole record without having a spotlight shone on it. So we shone a spotlight on it. We put it out
makes
first.
sense.
A as a statement. Hey, we're back. We just did two instrumental records, but we haven't lost the plot. We're a prog band. Here we are with our new prog label, Inside Out. Here's this amazing story that we came up with. Live with it, digest it, read it, and get it, you know? And so that was the plan with
Intentional.
that. It was very intentional
I get it. I get
because,
it. Because you guys got very punchy songs, like very fast, punchy songs,
yeah,
like The Fall, the Blackstar. It's
yeah,
fast, it hits you hard. The Fall
yeah.
is one of my favorite songs on the album. Tell me a little about the
Oh,
history of that one.
I love that. That's awesome. Yeah, it came from this little riff. Kevin was doing some sort of run like hell, arpeggiated stuff on the guitar. And I was like, dude, that's a little too close to run like hell, man. And then we kind of changed it up. And then we made it our own thing. And then I just kind of played with some melodies over top of that. And then we figured out, oh, this is a song about, two lovers at the end of their world being conquered by the Syndicate, because obviously this
Yeah.
is a concept record. And so we fit it into the concept that way. But I took a more approachable drum approach to it. I was very inspired by Peter Criss on that
Oh,
one.
one of my
Where
favorites.
yeah, he's a legend. He's so good. One of my father's favorites as well. And I was just kind of like, okay, you're gonna be riffing from more of like a Pink Floyd angle. I'm
Mhm.
gonna take from a more Kiss angle, and we're kind of married the two, and it came about very organically. That was one that we had for a while, and we just had David Bottrell come in to help us tailor the top line to suit it more.
Oh, okay. Yeah, it's a great song. One of the songs that's really great is where you do sound like Robert Plant is Through the Looking Glass.
Oh yeah,
What a tremendous song that is. Tell me about that one. That's pretty cool.
thanks, man. Yeah, that one, I am probably it's one of my favorite tracks I
Is
think
it
we've
really?
made.
Okay. I agree.
Yeah, I love that one so much. That one came about in a jam where we started building it, and it had this very Lady of the Lake feel, another one of our songs.
Mhm.
Uh, and I just had this idea for a massive chorus, um, and it was that melody. And then we went down to Nashville, and we had this melody, and we didn't have necessarily a lyric. And then we were in the studio and Kevin was like, we got to talk about like the dragon's wings we fly. I'm like, dude, that's so lame. What do you mean? Like, please, no, 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 no. And then I was saying no the whole time. And we get down there and we talk to Nick, and Kevin tells us to Nick. And Nick was just watching House of the Dragon,
Yeah.
the HBO show, the Game of Thrones kind of
Yeah.
spin-off. And he was like, dude, that's so cool. And I was like, oh, shoot, okay. So I lost the bet. It became Upon the Dragon's Wings We Fly, whatever. And
Too
then I
funny.
lived with it.
You know, when I was a kid, probably high school, I wrote a song called On Dragon's Wings. Nothing like you,
No way.
it was three chords, And I was thinking about it when I was listening to your stuff, and I was like, yeah,
Wow.
mine was really corny. There's hit the mark because like On Dragon's Wings, it's so cliche, you know what I mean? It's so
Yeah,
funny, but
you gotta
it did
own
work.
it.
It works. That is so
Yeah.
funny.
So we just
You said earlier you got like that 70s vibe to the band. Did you guys
yeah.
use any vintage instruments, vintage gear to help you, bring that 70s hard rock? You got a hard rock in there too. There's hard rock.
Yeah. Definitely. Yeah, Kevin's got like all the vintage gear. He's got the old Mini Moog, the
Okay.
vintage Mini Moog, like one of the original ones. He's got like the old Taurus pedals. Um, he's got like we have like old Leslie's that we
Mhm.
run our stuff through. Old equipment. I have a 70s vintage kit. On this one, we use the 70s Slingerland black gold kit for
Okay.
some of the stuff. And then the others were just like this modern sounding drum kit for Apocalypse
Yeah.
and some other tracks like Through the Looking Glass. Uh, yeah, so we
Interesting.
used a mixture of gear, but we definitely lean toward the classic sounding gear.
It's interesting. I never think of drums as having a classic or more modern sound. I'm not a drummer and I don't pretend
Yeah,
to be
yeah,
one. I get it with
yeah,
gear, with amps. I know all of that. But
yeah.
it's interesting that a drum could have more of a classic sound, the 70s sound.
Oh yeah, definitely. They were made different, different shells,
Mhm.
different wood ages differently as well. So like you can actually hear the difference in it.
Wow.
Um, yeah,
Fascinating.
the quality and like the factories, all like the minutia you can get in with how Gibson from X year to X year,
Yes,
they were
yes.
manufacturing them here and the wood kind of feels different. Same thing with the drums,
Well,
man.
it's interesting. That's fascinating. I never thought of it that way. I always thought bigger was better for at least the guys I was with in the band and how they were going
Yeah.
to mic the drums. That was more
Ah, yeah.
critical. And you can only have one drum set, right?
Yeah.
Well, as a kid growing up, you only had one guitar, you only had
Yeah.
one drum set, so you made the best out of it. And
Yeah.
it's how you handled it and how you played it and how you recorded it on it. So,
Totally. And it is still how you play it. It's
yeah.
95% of it is the player. The other 5% is like the gear for sure.
Now, you talked about the concept. You talked about there's a running theme, a thread through it. The
Yeah.
songs are very very thematic and very, I can't say the word.
That's
Tell me a
okay.
little bit about putting that together, making so that they're almost like a movie.
Yeah, well, when we make the music, like I said, we visualize the story. We had from the onset the concept that this was going
Mhm.
to be a prequel to our album Fearless,
Okay.
conceptually. And we wanted to tell the story of our big bad in our whole overarching inter-album story. They're called the Syndicate, and the face of this big bad is Blackstar. And we've developed his story through this record. And we made this story and we kind of adhered it to the songs as we saw fit. That angular riff became Blackstar because it sounded angry and mean and almost like this montage of
Yeah.
him conquering these other worlds. And so we made it that. And like Through the Looking Glass kind of sounded like the good guys, the Ebb and Flight, before the Syndicate arrived on their home planet. It was like their last triumphant victory against the the local threat to them and them overcoming that before they were utterly crushed by this intergalactic threat. And so
Very
it
cool.
just came to us, it came to us very naturally, but it was also very intentional. Like a lot of what we do is very intentional, um, to thread this through and to kind of
A lot of
puzzle
work.
it. Yeah, it's a lot of
Definitely a
work.
lot of work.
Yeah.
Well, listen, as a new fan, I love you guys. I think you're great. I've been listening to the album nonstop since other Kevin sent it to me, and I wish you the best. And it's really fascinating. It was such a pleasure to talk to you. You're a very easy guy to talk to and very insightful. So thank you for sharing all that insight. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks, Robert. It's been such a pleasure to chat, and I'm happy to share.
Yeah, cool. Hope to see you on tour when you come to New Jersey, New York. Okay.
Definitely, man. We will.
All right,
All
buddy.
right.
Bye bye.
Take it easy.